Fiat's lovable 500 city car is even harder to resist in 500C convertible form. It's not been fundamentally changed in this improved guise, but then loyal buyers didn't really want it to be. These people will like the smarter look, the extra media options and the more individual feel. You can tell that Fiat knows its market.
Good things very often come in small packages, and there's little doubt that the little 500 has been a good thing for Fiat, rejuvenating the Italian brand from America to Andalusia. Crucial to the profitability of this little car has been the success of the variant that we're looking at here, the open-topped 500C. Now, like its fixed-top counterpart, it was significantly improved in mid-2015 to create the refreshed version that we're going to look at in this film. Al fresco motoring has always been a significant option in creating the full Fiat 500 experience. Indeed, it only took a year from the launch of the original Nuova 500 in 1957 for an open-topped 500N version to be introduced. That wasn't a full convertible, and it didn't need to be. Instead, a vast fabric sunroof provided open-air enjoyment without the need for significant extra cost or weight, just as it does in this modern-era open-topped 500 model, the 500C. We first saw this variant in 2009, a car identical to its fixed-top stablemate in every way, save for the vast concertina fabric top that could be electrically retracted right back. This setup came with quite a price premium, but many customers seemed happy to pay it, seduced by saccharine-laden levels of cuteness that could be liberally embellished from the exhaustive options list. Time moves on, though. By 2015, this type of al fresco roof arrangement had been copied by direct rivals like the DS3 Cabrio and the Vauxhall Adam Rox Air. Plus, it was more affordably offered as an option on city cars like Peugeot's 108, Citroën C1 and Toyota's Aygo, models that targeted lower-level derivatives of this Fiat. Meanwhile, top-end 500C variants were facing fresh competition from Mini's third-generation convertible. With no full replacement 500C model yet in sight to meet this varied challenge, Fiat responded with the far-reaching package of changes we're going to evaluate here. The look hasn't changed much. Well, why would it? That's the main reason for this variant's sales success. Minor tweaks, though, have brought the styling into line with other larger models in the wider 500 range. Plus, there's a little more efficiency, even more scope for personalisation, and wider availability of the Fiat Group's Uconate infotainment technology. Does all of this do enough, though, to keep this cuddly car competitive in its sun-drenched segment? Let's find out. Step into the 500C, and as you might expect, it's very similar to the hard-topped hatchback. The driving position is quite upright, but it's not uncomfortable, and the large, thin-rimmed steering wheel and the billiard ball-type gear knob both add to the retro flavour. The controls are simple and easy to use, while the large door mirrors compensate for the fairly dramatic loss of rearward vision when the roof's fully folded. Now, to be fair, this aspect isn't as bad as you'd find with cabriolet versions of the Mini or the Volkswagen Beetle, but budget buyers will still need to consider paying extra for rear parking sensors for perfect peace of mind when they're nipping into tight spaces. We should perhaps start by talking specifically about the roof. Now, it's certainly nice that you don't have to slow right down to pedestrian speeds in order to operate it, and in the way that you would have to in the rival models I just mentioned. Instead, it's possible to electrically open or close the 6-foot fabric top at speeds of up to 37 miles an hour, moving through 3 preset positions via these upper buttons near the rearview mirror. And when it's shut, standards of refinement are, rather impressively, almost identical to those of the ordinary fixed top model. When it's open, then you get the opportunity of a tan without being blown about. Though, if you do pause the top in its halfway position, then the bulging creases create plenty of wind jitter that's only partially alleviated by the optional wind deflector that you can mount behind the front seat headrests. The majority of 500C customers specify their cars with the least expensive 69 brake horsepower 1.2 litre 4-cylinder petrol unit fitted beneath the bonnet, an engine now also offered in more frugally orientated eco form. The performance you'll get in that case, though, is distinctly leisurely. 62 miles an hour from rest, occupying 12.9 seconds en route to just 99 miles an hour, and pulling power through the old-school 5-speed gearbox, restricted by the availability of just 102 newton-meters of torque, which explains why we suggest you don't automatically sign on the dotted line for that power plant without at least trying Fiat's 2-cylinder 0.9 litre twin-air technology. And that's the engine that we've got here. Now, like us, you might need a bit of persuading in this direction. After all, it does seem a little strange to be paying more for a smaller engine. Will it really get you mini standards of performance? Well, wouldn't a 2-cylinder engine of this size be the kind of thing likely to generate little more power than the average sit-on lawnmower? Well, apparently not. Here there are at least 85 braked horses on tap, and that's sufficient to see 62 miles an hour blow by in 11 seconds on the way to an academic maximum of 107 miles an hour. More important is the way that the twin-air soundtrack really suits the cheeky character of this car. Now, the engine note's been refined a little with the most recent package of changes, but it still delivers a pleasing putter-putter thrum that seems to be exactly the kind of thing you'd have heard from the 1957 original nipping through the back streets of Naples. You can better enjoy it too with the roof down in this open-top version. There's even a pleasing note of historical symmetry in that this car's spiritual predecessor, the original Fiat 500N model from 1958, also had 2-cylinder power, although back then the wheezy old unit in question generated just 17.5 brake horsepower. This one, as we've said, gives you considerably more, and in the process generates nearly 50% more torque than you get from the base 1.2 litre unit, although you will need to be quick with the slick-shifting, high-mounted gear lever to keep in the meat of the power band. On the subject of torque, I should point out that you don't automatically get the full quoted amount unless you disengage the Eco Mode button that twin-air models feature on the dash. When it's activated, this restricts the engine's output in the interest of efficiency to just 120 newton meters in the case of this 0.9 litre unit, which can be a bit disconcerting if you forget it's on and then suddenly need to dive for a gap in the traffic. Now, I mentioned earlier that the twin-air variant can offer at least 85 brake horses because these days Fiat also allows you to specify a pokier 105 bhp version of that power plant. Now, that's the one that we're trying here. In comparison to the twin-air 85 bhp unit, rest to 62 improves to 10 seconds dead en route to 117 miles an hour. That's if you press the provided Sport button, which transforms the TFT dash display that plusher models get into a turbo boost gauge, along with graphics that turn from white to red. Now, that's all very nice, but it's not especially relevant to the kind of motoring that this car will typically do. Given that it'll mainly be used around town, quite a few owners will want to order the optional but rather jerky dual logic gearbox as a kind of manual transmission without a clutch that'll save you all that left foot pumping when the traffic snarls up. Are there other engine options with this car? Well, a few, but they're rarely specified. A tiny number of buyers like the black pump-fueled torque of the 1.3 litre multi-jet diesel variant. And the 500 model's very small male audience is the predominant market for the 1.4 litre T-Jet turbo petrol power plant that serves in the various hot hatch Abarth models, offering 145, 165 or even 180 bhp. That Fiat has managed to make these Abarth variants brilliant fun to chuck about is quite an achievement, given that as a design, the 500 is engineered around a fairly crude set of underpinnings. The chassis dates back to a previous generation Panda model launched well over a decade ago and comes with suspension that allows low-speed bumps to be felt and heard rather too often. Plus, the steering of mainstream models offers little feedback when you're pressing on across twistier routes. And through those turns, the softer setup of this Fiat means that you'll get more body roll than you would in a rival like the Mini Convertible or the DS3 Cabrio. Still, as we said at the beginning, none of this really matters to most potential buyers who can't look beyond the cute shape and the way that they're going to personalise the paintwork so it looks a bit different when it's parked alongside others at the gym. These people will appreciate the on-the-move changes Fiat has made here, the improved refinement you'll notice of motorway speeds and the better brakes. And they'll like the light steering with its city option that lightens it even further so you can twirl the car into the tightest spaces. Or test out the super tight 9.3 metre turning circle. It helps enormously here that the high driving position and the big windows make this car so easy to see out of and to place on the road. It's urban friendly through and through, you see. Who couldn't love a face like this? It's faithfully updated from the 50s and a 1958 Fiat 500N model that back then set a template for affordable open-top motoring. Rather than the complete top half of the car raising and folding back as it would on a conventional convertible, that early fabric-topped 500 model used a kind of giant sunroof in a sardine tin-like arrangement that saw the canvas top concertinaing backwards and forwards to suit the weather. Now, half a century on, either in a nod to the original or in a bid to save costs, this 500C uses exactly the same kind of idea. Open-roofed, yet retaining the same B-pillars, the same door frames and the same rear side windows as a standard fixed-top hatch. So cute, isn't it? And for goodness sake, even the Tychy manufacturing plant in Poland, where Fiat builds the convertible version of its 500 city car, has got a cuddly name. It's tempting to imagine the factory as a Willy Wonka-style operation, where the cars float on rivers of golden syrup down assembly lines run by a green-skinned chorus line of Oompa Loompas. A factory of fun where the foreman's a talking spoon and there's a gingerbread man in middle management. Back in reality, that production facility has been churning out 500 models since 2007, and on first acquaintance, very little appears to be different with this supposedly much improved version. Fiat begs to differ on that, though, insisting that no fewer than 1,800 changes have been made in improving it. None of these have altered the dinky external dimensions, so at just 3.5 metres long, 1.6 metres wide and 1.5 metres high, this Fiat can still fit into spaces that even a Mini would have to avoid. Most of the exterior styling tweaks that have been made can be found here at the front. The main round headlights adopt clever polyelliptical modules for improved nighttime vision and integrate dip beam headlamps and turn signals. These lower lights just below deal with the main beam and LED daytime running light functions and adopt the same circular profile so as to graphically reproduce the zeros of the 500 name. The bonnet retains its distinctive traditional clamshell form, and the trapezoidal nose gets more pronounced ribbing, while lower down there's this three-dimensional grille which on top models features these chrome effect buttons. In profile, the 500 model faithful will notice new alloy wheel designs, but otherwise things are much as before. And that means you get the same lovable, short, curvy dimensions and this distinct crease that flows above the door handles from the front wing to the rear light cluster. Underneath, as before, this car is based on the ageing underpinnings of a previous model Fiat Panda, but potential owners rarely know that, and they rarely care if they do. At the rear, this revised model has adopted what Fiat calls empty light clusters, comprised of ring-shaped structures with body-coloured centres. And that's meant the need to relocate the fog light and the reversing light lower down into the edges of the redesigned bumper. What draws the eye back here, though, at least when the roof's down like this, are the substantial folds of fabric that create well-publicised issues when it comes to rearward vision. At least, though, they don't very much impinge on boot space, the 182-litre capacity being virtually the same as you get on the normal 500 hatch. Now, compare that to the paltry 160 litres you get roofed down with a pricier drop-top Mini. The boot lid itself does, it's true, have a pretty small opening, but at least you can use it when the soft top's fully down. The electric's automatically lifting the retracted hood bundle a few centimetres upwards when the boot release is activated, so you can raise the luggage door properly. Should you need more carriage capacity, then the rear seat backs fold forwards to increase the space available to 520 litres. Rather meanly though, this split folding arrangement costs extra for budget buyers. As for the roof, well, it can be activated either when you're stationary like this, or at speeds of up to 37 miles an hour by pressing this button next to the interior roof light. Unlike the 50s 500 model canvas roof, this double-layered fabric top won't leak or flap about. It also features a proper glass rear window, and it's available in a choice of colours, so it's fully personalisable. And when you want to put the roof down again, one press takes the roof automatically back to the spoiler position, and then you press the button again for at least half a second to fully open the roof. Well, now we're inside, let's take a look around. Every 500C model invites a high degree of personalisation via a myriad of colour and trim permutation options, but whatever you choose is sure to dovetail deliciously with a very well-judged blend of retro chic and clean contemporary design in the cabin. Get comfortable inside here and you start to realise that delicious details are everywhere. The coloured fascia panels featuring iconic 500 badging and colour matched against the bodywork. As for the key change to this improved model, well, on a plush variant like this one, that is very obvious. This 5-inch Uconnect live infotainment display that's mounted high on the dashboard, right in your line of sight. Now this system, which is optional on lower spec models, allows Bluetooth hands-free calling, music streaming, voice recognition and an SMS reader that will read text messages to you. Via this setup, you can also keep up with your friends on Facebook and Twitter, keep up with the news via Reuters, select from more than 35 million music tracks via Deezer, and access over 100,000 global radio stations via TuneIn. Extra cost Uconnect system options also allow you to add DAB radio and navigation functionality if you want it. Now, for a technophobe like me, it is a bit of an issue that you no longer get a CD player though. Not much has changed in terms of getting comfortable. It's still disappointing to find that there's no reach adjustment on the steering wheel and that seat height adjustment is only standard on a top spec model like this one. Still, the seat itself is slightly more comfortable thanks to some ergonomic reshaping. Plus you get smarter electric window switches and a redesigned steering wheel that features audio controls on plusher models. Through it you glimpse the usual circular instrument cluster with analog dials for speed and for engine revs, plus digital secondary gauges. Opt for this top spec lounge variant and you get the extra cost option of replacing this binnacle with a 7-inch TFT display that integrates with the functionality of the Uconnect dashboard infotainment screen. What else? Well, the car's certainly been well screwed together in the Polish factory, and you notice the upgraded materials now used, although cheaper plastics are still evident the further down you look. In-cabin stowage remains well up to par for something city car sized. The revised centre console features cup holders and a relocated 12-volt socket. Plus, there's a small cubby on the driver's side of the centre console and the usual door bins and cup holders. And praise be, Fiat has at last provided a lid for the glove box. Other issues? Well, not too many. The seat itself is set rather high. The infotainment screen attracts reflections when the roof's down, and the narrow pedal box might be a bit tight for those over-familiar with the offerings of Colonel Sanders. It's impossible to be irritated with this car for too long, though. These mock bakelite inserts around the stereo and the heater add to the charm, and everything about it's just so bright and cheery. Now time to move on to the rear seat. Given that the external dimensions of this car are so short, you won't be expected to find much room here, and there isn't. Larger adults will find their heads brushing the roof when the top's raised, and they'll need to make full use of the elbow cutouts indented into the side panels. Most, though, will find the space provided just about sufficient for 2 people on short to medium journeys, and it'll probably be just fine for kids. This 500C derivative may only account for around 10% of total sales of the 500 three-door model, but it must be pretty profitable for Fiat, given the premium of around £2,500 being asked over the fixed-top version. That means most 500C variants will be sold in the £14,000 to £18,000 bracket. Now bear in mind that at the bottom of the range you'll be limited to the 69 brake horsepower 1.2 litre petrol engine, the entry-level Pop model only available with that unit. Progress up to mid-range Pop Star trim and you'll be looking at having to find the best part of £15,000, but that level of specification does give you more choices beneath the bonnet. So, what about those choices? Is it really worth stretching up to a twin-air powered 500 model like the one we're trying here? Well, over 80% of buyers choose not to before usually going on to spend the money they saved on optional extras or personalised trim. For the few 500C buyers who do want something more sophisticated, pokey and efficient under the bonnet and are prepared to pay nearly £16,000 to get it, the twin-air option has its appeal, although we would be mindful here of two facts. First, that customers who avoid entry-level trim can pay a £200 premium and get the base 1.2 litre four-cylinder engine in eco form, in which, guys, it's very nearly as economical as the twin-air power plant. And secondly, it's worth also remembering that for just over £1,000 more than twin-air money, you can get yourself a 1.3 litre multi-jet diesel derivative that really would give you better day-to-day running cost returns. For all that, there is something very appealing about the twin-air version of this car, particularly the sound it makes and the eager reviness that really suits the character of this Fiat. So do give it a try at the dealership before finalising your choice of model. If you decide you like this engine, your salesperson will offer you the option of upgrading the unit into a pokier 105 brake horsepower, guys, the engine we have here, thereby creating a very spirited little 500 indeed. Such a car might well, in fact, offer a more cost-effective alternative to the 500 Abarth hot hatch models that many larger Fiat dealers will be able to tell you about. Now, these come only with a bigger four-cylinder 1.4 litre turbo petrol power plant, so inevitably offer more performance, but running costs are much higher and prices sit in the £17,000 to £22,500 bracket. Plus, insurance and maintenance will be more expensive. Whichever of the petrol power plants you favour, there's the £750 option of the dual-logic clutchless gearbox if you want it. On to the value proposition represented by 500C model range pricing as a whole. You might think that the most obvious rival to this car is the Mini convertible, but actually these days that's a slightly bigger and more powerful car, priced from around £20,000. The same, by the way, applies to Volkswagen's Beetle Cabriolet. Another apparently obvious rival that's actually pricier and bigger is the Citroën-derived DS3 Cabrio. Now, at first glance, that Gallic contender looks quite affordable, offered in entry-level PureTech 82 guise and not much more than £16,000, so around £500 more than a 500C in twin-air form. You won't really want a DS3 Cabrio in PureTech 82 guise, though, because that old-tech engine is nearly 50% less efficient than this Fiat's twin-air unit. The PureTech 110 DS3 power plant you have to have in a DS3 for more sensible running costs retails at well over £18,500, which will be more than many 500C customers will want to pay. OK, so enough on what doesn't really compete with this 500C. What does? In answer to that, I'll give you a few options. If you're looking at the bottom of the range and the base 1.2 litre 69 brake horsepower Pop 500C derivative, you might be interested to note that for around £3,000 less, you could have a Peugeot 108, a Citroën C1 or a Toyota Aygo fitted out with the same kind of large fabric folding roof. In many ways, cars like these aren't really rivals, though. And for a typical 500C buyer, choosing any one of them in preference to this car would be like choosing a Marks & Spencer handbag over a Prada one. The Smart 4.2 Cabrio is a little more of a lifestyle-orientated choice, and that's a car that would save you around £2,000 over comparable versions of this one. The Smart is a much smaller two-seat only proposition though, plus it's much noisier and it's pretty useless for longer distance trips. In our view, a better match for this Fiat is provided by a rival you may not have thought about. Vauxhall's trendy little Adam model in funky Rox Air open-top guise. Normally aspirated 1.2 and 1.4 litre ROX Air variants retail in the £15,500 to £16,000 bracket. So the same kind of money as a 500C Twin Air. On the plus side, the Vauxhall looks almost as good as this Fiat and is just as personalisable. But there's no really affordable entry-level version, and the folding fabric roof is smaller. If, having considered all of that, you conclude that it is a Fiat 500C that you really, really want, then you're going to need to know just how generous Fiat has been with the standard spec. Now, excluding all the inevitable special editions you tend to get with a car like this, there are three main trim levels: Pop, Pop Star and Lounge, with an £875 premium necessary to upgrade yourself between each. Plus, at the top of the lineup, there's an additional, more dynamic-looking S model, available with all the main engines and there to bridge the gap between the standard variants and the Abarth 500C range, which starts from around £17,000. But let's start our spec search at the budget end. Base Pop trim is only available to buyers wanting the base 1.2 litre petrol engine, and it includes, well, the basics. In addition to the folding fabric electric roof that's an integral part of the 500C package, that means things like daytime running lights, power windows and mirrors, remote central locking, a decent quality radio CD MP3 player with USB and aux in points, and a start and stop system to cut the engine when you don't need it, when you're stuck at lights or waiting in traffic. You also get a space-saver spare wheel rather than the kind of awful tyre inflator kit that mini models inflict on you. Upgrade yourself to Pop Star trim and it all gets a bit nicer. At this level you get 15-inch alloy wheels, powered and heated body-coloured door mirrors and the 50-50 split-folding rear bench that rather meanly Pop trim makes you do without. Upgrade further to the plusher Lounge spec that we're trying here, and you also get chrome exterior trim, front fog lights and, crucially, rear parking sensors. Inside, there's a Uconnect 5-inch infotainment touchscreen with Bluetooth phone compatibility, plus a height-adjustable driver's seat and a leather-covered steering wheel with audio controls. Now, go for the more dynamic-looking S model, and in addition to the main Lounge model features, you also get sportier bumpers and side skirts, a satin graphite exterior trim finish, black sports seats, tinted rear windows, a chrome tailpipe, a sports steering wheel and a larger 7-inch Uconnect infotainment screen. On to options. On this 500C, we think you have to have the wind stop that fits over the rear passenger compartment when you're not using it and reduces roof-down buffeting for those up front. If you haven't stretched to one of the top trim levels, then we'd recommend that you add in that Uconnect infotainment system I just mentioned. On all models, there's the option of upgrading that with a DAB radio and a navigation setup, while Lounge variant buyers can specify a larger 7-inch screen. Other options include a full leather interior, climate control, dark tinted glass, bi-xenon headlamps, an electrochromatic rear-view mirror, a leather gear knob and chromed kick plates. Further up the range, you can also specify a thumping 440-watt Beats Audio 7-speaker sound system. A full range of Mopar accessories includes things like door mirror trims, distinctive side badges, bespoke leather gear knobs and vintage-style wheel trims. We like the whiteboard and pen set that sticks onto the passenger side of the dash and lets you jot down notes. Plus, there are things like coat hangers and, for the ladies, or the more urbane gentlemen, a perfume dispenser, plus a makeup bag that goes into one of the front cup holders. More practically, you can get a boot organiser or luggage retaining nets. And the tailgate rack's also available, with 2 systems for transporting winter sports equipment, things like skis and snowboards. Where you're going to have most fun, though, is when it comes to specifying the exterior look of your car. And to widen the options here, Fiat's introduced a range of body wrappings available as part of what it calls a second skin personalisation programme. And if you don't want to go quite as far as sticking body wrappings all over your car, then your dealer will be happy to offer you a whole range of stripes and sticker sets. There's a choice of personalised ignition keys, and you might want to look at things like chrome bonnet trim, larger 16-inch alloy wheels, a branded side rubbing strip and red brake calipers, before you finish the whole thing off with your choice from what is now a much wider body colour palette, offering a choice of metallic, tricoat or pastel paint finishes. On to safety. Now, you don't get any of the latest electronic camera-based features that are now creeping into rival models, but all the basics are very much in evidence. So even the cheapest trim level gives you twin front, side and curtain airbags, plus a driver's knee bag. There's ESC stability control plus anti-lock brakes with HBA, hydraulic brake assistance, to help in panic stops. And those will be advertised to following motorists by automatically activating hazard warning lights. On top of that, you get Fiat's ASR and MSR traction control systems, tyre pressure monitoring, and a hill holder clutch to stop you from drifting backwards on uphill junctions. It all justifies this car's 5-star Euro NCAP safety test rating. One of the advantages with the way that Fiat has created this car comes in terms of its fuel and CO2 efficiency. Normally when you create a convertible version of a fixed-top car, that means extra weight and a less aerodynamic shape, and the result is higher running costs. Now, to give you an example of that, compare a mini convertible to a fixed-top mini hatch with the same engine. Now, the ragtop version goes about 5 fewer miles on every gallon and puts out somewhere between 8 and 12 grams per kilometre more of CO2. There's none of that here, though. A 500C is just as clean and frugal as its tin-top counterpart. At first glance, Fiat's figures make a compelling case for the twin-air petrol 500 model that we've been trying here. Compared to a version of this car using the conventional entry-level 1.2-litre 4-cylinder petrol unit, 2-cylinder twin-air motoring seems to offer you a cake-and-eat-it scenario. After all, paying the extra to have this pokier engine in its volume 85 brake horsepower form gets you 23% more power from a variant that delivers a 15% reduction in fuel consumption and emissions. Well, that sounds great, doesn't it? And sure enough, the official figures suggest that an 85 brake horsepower 500C twin-air model delivers 74.3 miles per gallon on the combined cycle and 90 grams per kilometre of CO2. And those figures remain identical if you choose a dual-logic clutchless version. And there's not even much of an efficiency downside if you go for the pokier 105 brake horsepower variant. Here you're looking at 67.3 miles per gallon and 99 grams per kilometre. We're not so sure, though, that the case is as open and shut as that when it comes to choosing the right 500Z model engine for your particular needs and budget. We spent quite a long time with the base 1.2-litre variant, and we can understand why over 80% of buyers choose that unit. For one thing, a lot of these people know that the quoted figures for the twin-air versions are very difficult to achieve in the real world. In fact, they're impossible to achieve unless you drive a 500 twin-air model with its eco mode permanently activated. Almost nobody does this because the eco feature significantly limits the extra pulling power that would have prompted you to pay extra for the twin-air model in the first place. On top of that, the 4-cylinder 1.2 has been getting progressively more class competitive when it comes to efficiency, able to deliver 60.1 miles per gallon in this latest Euro 6 guise, or 62.8 miles per gallon when mated to the dual-logic clutchless box. And the CO2 figures aren't bad either, 110 grams per kilometre with a normal stick shift, or 105 grams per kilometre in dual-logic form. Plus, Fiat is also offering an eco version that can cut your CO2 to just 99 grams per kilometre and improve the combined cycle economy to 65.7 miles per gallon. And now this is down to a smart alternator, improved underbody aerodynamics and low rolling resistance tyres. All of this means that a 500 1.2 Eco's running cost figures aren't too far off those of the more sophisticated twin-air version. Both engines, though, are easily outshone by the single diesel alternative, the 1.3-litre multi-jet model, a 500C able to return 83.1 miles per gallon on the combined cycle and 89 grams per kilometre of CO2. The 1.4-litre T-Jet petrol turbo Abarth hot hatch models, of course, cost a lot more to run. The best of these is the 145 brake horsepower model, which manages 47.1 miles per gallon on the combined cycle and 139 grams per kilometre of CO2. I should point out that all 500s are fitted with a stop and start system that cuts the engine when you don't need it, stuck in the lights or waiting in traffic. Plus, to help owners get somewhere close to the quoted returns on a regular basis, all models get a gear change indicator. Now, if you have a car fitted with a Uconnect Infotainment touchscreen, then you can go further by downloading a Uconnect Live app that will deliver access to Fiat's eco-drive system. This assesses your driving style in real time and gives you tips to improve it that could improve fuel consumption by up to 16%. The Uconnect Live app can also give you service deadline memos and an interactive owner handbook to manage car maintenance. On the subject of servicing, well, costs for this can vary quite a bit depending on the engine you choose, but all 500 models will need a garage visit every 18,000 miles or 2 years. There's the option of an annual service if your car covers less than 9,000 miles a year, and if that's likely to apply to you, then we would suggest you stick to that recommendation, if only for an oil change. What else? Well, this car should certainly be reasonably cheap to insure. For the C version of the base petrol 1.2, you'll be rated at between groups 10 and 11. For the Twin Air 85 brake horsepower, you'll be rated at between groups 14 and 15. And for the Twin Air 105 brake horsepower variant, you'll be rated at group 15. The Abarth 500C models are rated from group 27 upwards. Residual values are better than you might expect them to be on a small, affordable Fiat, if not quite as good as you get from something like a mini convertible. Expect most 500C variants to hold around 40% of their value after 3 years, that's provided you don't go too mad with options, of course. Finally, a word about warranties. You get 2 years of manufacturer cover with this car, plus a further year from the dealer. Plus, there's no mileage restriction, which makes this Fiat deal better than the restricted 3-year, 60,000 mile package you get with rival mini convertibles and DS3 Cabrio models. There's also a year of roadside assistance cover, a reasonable 3-year paintwork warranty, and an 8-year anti-perforation warranty. And we're used to the idea of paying through the nose for items deemed to be on the cutting edge of fashion. But Fiat's 500C provides a welcome break from all that. Though the premium this soft-top model demands over its hatchback counterpart does seem high, the overall package still represents one of the most affordable routes into soft-top motoring. And the car that comes with it remains one of the trendiest on the road, just as liable to turn heads whether you've plumped for the entry-level 1.2-litre version or shelled up for something much plusher. As for the changes made to this improved version, well, issues like restrictions in boot space and rear seat accommodation remain, but the things the brand could improve without a major redesign have been usefully updated. As a result, this is now a more modern-feeling product. As importantly, it's more personalisable too, thanks to the second skin individualisation programme. And no other city car is now more media savvy, thanks to the clever Uconnect infotainment systems that transform the interior. Of course, not everyone's priorities lie in Facebooking their friends on the way to eat designer sushi. So for everyone else, the greater refinement will be welcome, especially when applied to the Twin Air 2-cylinder petrol engine that remains a key part of this Fiat's appeal. The sound and the eager response of that unit suit the car, and though the quoted fuel and CO2 returns are difficult to achieve in real-world motoring, it certainly makes the 500 a very cheap thing to run indeed. This power plant's also got quite a bit of pep if you're able to stretch to it in pokier 105 brake horsepower form. And in summary, well, in one of these, even the most mundane of commutes can be turned into a journey you might actually look forward to making. Here's an open-topped city car that's very difficult to dislike. A carefree cabrio that's free, sunny and open in its outlook, with a sheer joie de vivre that's central to its charming appeal. Now, choosing a fashionable little runabout can often be a risk. Here, though, is one you can enjoy without a worry.